Welcome to the Soul Enchilada. This is podcast number 14. I am Laura Bussey, one of your co-hosts, and I am here with Christine Ruth. Thanks, Christine, for coming back.
Thanks for giving me a second chance, a 20 millionth chance, Laura. It's good to be back. Thank you. The girl who sticks her foot in her mouth is back. There's hope for us, ladies.
Absolutely. Anyway. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. You are welcome every single week. We're so thankful to be together. Before I ask you the question for today, I just want to do a shout out. I found out that tonight there is a group of women gathering in a home, making enchiladas and answering questions, listening to our podcast and asking each other the questions that are in our show notes. And I just want to make a shout out. That is amazing. Did you know there were going to be Enchilada Nights?
Oh my gosh. I did not envision that, but that is my absolute favorite meal. So if all you get from this podcast is inspiration to make and eat enchiladas, I feel like my soul will be fulfilled.
And I would say invite some girlfriends, listen to the podcast. You will always find questions that you can answer in our show notes. So you don't have to make things up. It's right there for you. Okay. Are you ready, Christine, for this week's question?
Yeah. Lay it on me, Laura. What is it?
It's a soul enchilada question. Here we go. I'm 37 years old and I have no idea what I want to become when I grow up. I feel like I should be happy just being a mother, but I'm not fulfilled. How do I figure out my life's purpose?
You and me both, listener. What am I going to be when I want to grow up? When I grow up, I have no idea, right? Like I'm 50, I'm turning 50 and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So welcome to the club of lost women. But what a great question, right? How do we figure out our life's purpose? And I think it's such a great question, especially for us as women, because I feel like we have a script, particularly as women, that we start living out. It's a script that society gives us. It's a script we often receive from our parents, from our culture, that says, that we go to school, that we maybe go to college, maybe we fit in a gap year, we go get our first job, then we fall in love, then we partner up, then the script says, oh, okay, we're supposed to have babies, and then we're supposed to just love it, love hanging out with the babes, playing Legos on the kitchen floor. And we see all these images of moms that are just so fulfilled, loving their husbands and making dinner and Martha Stewarting up the table and then just enjoying those play dates. And I hear you, listener. I did not feel fulfilled doing those things. I wanted to be one of those moms. I wanted to be a mom that was totally content with living out that script. And I was not. How about you, Laura?
Well, I think I'm a teacher and I love children. I think that's how God made me, that I fell in love with children at a young age. And so I was the mom that played Legos on the floor and my house was a complete mess, but I loved imaginative play and I loved reading books and I loved being a mom. But at the same time, I still was like, is this it? Like, is this my calling? Because there's only 3 of them. And I felt like I wanted to influence 300 of them or 3,000 of them. Like there was a longing in my heart that was, I know I feel content here, but there was still something that was calling me to have a bigger influence. So I do understand. I relate to this listener very much, very much. And for me, I would say, like, I didn't understand like all the pieces of the stay-at-home mom thing. Like I didn't understand the food and, I'm trying to, I definitely wasn't Martha Stewart for sure, and definitely not the pioneer woman. But I had to just kind of mac and cheese again, so I understand. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as women. I think we're like, bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, never let your man forget you're a woman. How does that song go?
Laura, I would advise you not singing on the podcast, Laura. I love you.
Oh.
I'm just teasing you. You have an awesome voice. You just sing.
No, I don't. I believe you. But it's that idea that we try to be it all. We try to be it all.
Totally.
And we can't be it all.
Totally. And I think that, I am so grateful for the women that have gone before me that gave me the option of, of not, for my grandmother, she said I had two options. I could be a teacher or a secretary. So I picked secretary, which, I empathize for my grandma, because my grandma Peterson was just this brilliant woman. And I think she wanted to do more than that, and I think she was capable of doing more than that, but she didn't feel like she had options. And I'm so grateful for the options. And I think the first piece of this is to, say there's no shame in being, if you're someone, I love that you and I are different this way, right? There's no shame in being a domestic goddess. If you love to crochet and make meals or enjoy playing on the floor with your children, or being in the chaos, I think that's a beautiful calling in the world. And I think it's hard that those of us that don't feel content with that, or don't feel called to do that alone, I think it's important that we not shame ourselves or pressure ourselves to do more or less, right? That it's about finding your purpose, and your purpose is individual. And that you've either found your purpose or not based on, do I feel like what I'm doing right now is aligning with what I want to be for my life, right? And we have to learn to listen to our desires. I love, when I was a kid, I had a little poster of Psalm 37:4. It had like a bunny and a heart on it. And it said, like, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And I remember as a little girl, I felt like I knew what the desires of my heart were. Like, I wanted to fall in love. I loved animals. But then as I got older, I felt like I was way more concerned about this pressure I was putting on myself to succeed and get a degree and to be financially independent and to, be this uber mom that not only had children, but had a clean house and, cooked all whole foods and took care of my partner and took care of my children. But I lost track of the desires of my heart. And I remember, I appreciate that the listener is this age, because I was a little older, like 38, 39. And I remember thinking, I just feel numb. Like, I don't feel like I'm loving what I'm doing anymore. I feel lost. And I had kind of the quote unquote midlife crisis where I just really felt like I wanted more. And I remember there's a Switchfoot song that goes, you were meant to live for more than this. And I was listening to that song and going, I want more. There was a part in me that really wanted more. And so I started longing for and learning to listen for that deep desire. What are the desires that God or the universe or a higher power, however you think of that, has placed on my heart. And I got something called a spiritual director. I started therapy at the time, and I started leaning in and listening for what are the things that energize me? What are the things that make me feel alive? What are the things that, that give me a sense of vitality, vibrancy, so that when people see me, they say, oh, wow, John 10:10, she's living the abundant life. what does the abundant life look like? And I didn't know what that meant. I felt like I lost track of that, living out the script, as it were, quote unquote. And I had to like rediscover that with help, because I just got depressed. I felt stuck. I felt alone. And it took me a while to lean into that. How do you know? I mean, Laura, one of the reasons I admire you is you just seem like this deep, vivacious soul that always has this sense of where you're going and always has clarity about what you want. Like one of the reasons I love and admire you is you are hungry. You're so passionate. Like, where does that come from? Or how did you figure that out in your life?
Thanks, Christine. I appreciate that. Well, I want to share just real quick before I answer that question that this listener is 37 years old. But I think this is a question, no matter how old we are, we should continue asking ourselves, who am I to become now? And for such a time as this, such a time as now. And that really reminds me of Esther so much. I think for me, I knew as a little girl that I wanted to be a teacher. I'm a third generation teacher. I fell in love with kids at a very young age, started working at summer camps and started little teaching. I mean, I was a little girl and lining up my dolls and teaching them like Little House on the Prairie. And so I knew that that was a desire of my heart. I did teach all the way up until we had children. And then I was staying home with our children, and they drew me into the church. And it was really Evan, because he didn't want to leave me, and he didn't want me to leave him in Sunday school. And so I just walked in the door and I started teaching all the kids. And all of a sudden I realized, wow, I'm losing track of time. I feel like this 1 hour that I was with these kids was like 15 minutes. And I loved it. And God really redirected my heart to say, I know you always thought you were going to be a public educator and a leader and change the world for special ed kids. And I know that's where you thought you were going, but look where I'm taking you now. I'm taking you into the church. I want you to bring this Bible alive for kids. And that's a big part of where that real, raw, and relevant came from, because I didn't want kids to sit in a Sunday school class and the Bible to be boring. I wanted to bring it alive through drama and singing. I know I can't sing, Christine, but they don't know. Little kids don't know that you can't sing. But
no, not when you sing with passion. You gotta just do it with passion, right?
Yeah, but what's amazing, it was like the next step. It was the next step of faith that I needed to take. It was like, oh, well, I can use my curriculum writing for the classroom of the church. I can write, church-wide curriculum. I can teach parents. I can teach women. And I look back on my life and it's like this one stepping stone. It's like the verse that says, the word is a light to your path. And it was like one pathway, one little step at a time. And I had to trust and I had to believe that God was leading me towards my purpose. And then I'll never forget the day where all these women were like, you're teaching our kids the Bible. You're bringing it to life to them. They get in the car and they're so excited about what you taught them. Will you teach us? And I was like, oh my goodness. Yes. Because I was sitting under Beth Moore as a Bible teacher, and I would lose track of time. I would start going through her workbook and 2 hours would pass. And I was just going and loving learning from someone who was far ahead of me. And I think what's so amazing today is that we have podcasts, we have ways to learn from experts who've gone ahead of us. And I would ask this listener, like, who is further down the path that you admire? Someone who is living out her purpose on a pathway that you say, that is amazing. That could be a clue to you of where God is leading you, where your desires are leading you. And then the last thing I want to say is empty nesting. Oh, Christine, you're not there yet. I'm there, but it is crazy. So this 37-year-old, there will be a day when those 3 little kids or 5, I don't know how many she has, 2 kids, those kids will not be in your house. And you will come home and the house will be quiet and the rooms will be empty.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll think, whoa, how did I just spend 18 years or 20 years with these people? And now they're no longer under my roof. They're no longer under my influence. So I just encourage her to pour out her life, pour out her values, pour out her love. She is influencing those children for eternity. They're going to outlive her life, I pray. And so that is such an important job. You'll never look back on your life and say, dang it, I wish I hadn't played Legos on the kitchen floor. You'll look back on your life and, like, for me, having lost my son, I am so grateful that I sat on the floor and I played Legos and I tried to figure out computer stuff with him. And he was so far advanced than I was. But I'm so thankful that we shared life together, because that lasts forever. That lasts forever. And now I'm getting all emotional. Oh. And for all my empty nest listeners, I think this is a beautiful chapter in your life to go to God, take a walk, ask those hard questions. Lord, who are you calling me to become now? Because this is such a different season. I have girlfriends who literally took their kids to college, came home, got in bed, and stayed there in isolation for months. Like, we had to have an intervention for one of my girlfriends. We had to go and actually get her and bring her out and say, the light of day needs you. We need you. And this is a perfect time to link arms with other women who are empty nesters. This is a wonderful time to reinvent your career, volunteer, run after something you're passionate about, something that makes you angry. You know, when you read an article or you hear something on the news and it really makes you have this righteous indignation of like, what? How is that happening? That's a great sign. That's a great sign that you have a purpose on this planet that is so much greater than yourself. And how has God made you to use that? Okay, Christine, I'm getting all fired up.
You just said, thank you for all of that. I mean, we've named, first of all, pay attention to what energizes you, what gives you life, what brings you vitality, which for women can be hard to track, but track your energy. The second thing you named, Laura, that I loved is you talked about what I call flow, right? That we can kind of start noticing our purpose by the thing that we lose ourselves in, when we lose track of time, when we lose track of space. There's that great book, Flow Out. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the author's name, but I love that because it's just a scientific study on what happens in us when we find that sweet spot where we're in our flow and something is effortless and it doesn't take, discipline necessarily or efforting, because it's our deepest passion. So listening to that, you also named this piece, Laura, I love, about noticing what makes you mad, right? Like noticing what makes you angry is such a great way to discover your purpose, because you might be angry. For me, when I was growing up, I was really angry that confirmation, I had to go to something called confirmation. If you're Catholic, CCD, Lutherans had to go to confirmation. There's all kinds of faith formation, whether you're Jewish or Muslim, or any denomination has some sort of faith formation. Well, mine was awful. It was super boring. I got detention. The pastor that taught it was just awful. Sorry. Well, he's not around, so I don't have to worry about it, but he was not good at what he did. And that convicted me. Like, I can do this better. I'm going to understand theology. And I would get mad at bad theology. So when people would say things about God that I disagreed with, that I knew were not understanding scripture in the way I understood it, I would get angry about it. Or when I heard a bad sermon, or when I heard someone being judgmental. Like there were certain things, or when people are excluding others, okay? When people get exclusive, I get so angry. And that's because that's so connected to my sense of calling, my sense of purpose. So notice your energy, notice what brings you flow, notice what season you're in, and try to honor that season, because I loved what you said, Laura. Our seasons are always changing. And so we always have to discover anew, what is God or what is the divine calling me to do in this particular season? Because it shifts and you got to honor it, right? Because I am someone who's changed my vocation 3 times already, right? Like I started out in psychobiology in school, got into my 3rd year, realized I hated it, changed to social work, worked in social work for a while, then ended up deciding I was going to study world religions, then went into that, then decided to become a pastor, then over time decided I didn't like that, then went into hospice and therapy and marriage and family therapy. And now I'm doing podcasting and leading retreats. And, the average person, there have been many studies on this, especially the average millennial and on, changes career paths every 6 to 7 years. Every 6 to 7 years. So, our grandparents were very different than us. They often stayed in one job, career, which can be different, by the way, than your calling or vocation. Some people, their job is their vocation, their sense of calling. Other people, their calling takes place after hours, right? Through their volunteer work and through the things they do on the weekend. So sometimes your career aligns with your calling or your purpose. Sometimes it doesn't, right? But we change those. And so it has to be fresh, right? Like you have to lean in and go, what am I called to do? And I'm with you with the empty nester thing. I mean, I'm teetering on the edge of being an empty nester. I have 1 more year with my daughter, Addie. And I'm kind of freaking out. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of freaking out about it. Often as women, we overemphasize our role as mother or parent over our roles as spouse, over our roles as volunteer. We can be called to many, many roles. And it's important in a sense to hold those roles together, that we don't go, okay, I'm going to throw 100% of who I am into being a parent and then lose track of, oh yeah, I used to do theater. Oh yeah, I used to like writing. Oh yeah, I used to be funny and enjoyable or whatever.
Still are funny, Christine.
Well, it's coming back. It's coming back. But, as women, we have to pay attention to all these different roles. There's a quote by one of my favorite authors, Frederick Buechner. He says, your purpose is where your deep gladness meets the world's deepest need. And I love that, understanding of finding your purpose, because it's, first of all, you discovering what makes you glad, what makes you feel alive when you think of memories or situations just like yours, Laura, working in children's ministry, where you felt alive. For me, it's like engaging women in deep, authentic conversation about things they're afraid to talk about. I mean, right? I love to talk about God, sex, politics, everything that you can't talk about at Thanksgiving, right? I mean, I love all that stuff. I love that. I feel alive when I'm engaging people in deep conversation. And so that's where my deep gladness can meet the world's deepest need. And how do I meet the world's deepest need? I try to create meaningful conversation, create spaces for meaningful conversation, whether that's in retreats, whatever. But I discovered that just based on tracking my energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say that over time, those passions and those desires and that gladness can change, because right now I'm on a mission. I feel like my role, my call of my life is to rise up women. Like, come on, ladies, we need to rise up with resilience. We need to push through the problems for more perseverance. You are called to confidence for such a time as now, because I want women to see themselves as lifelong learners. And even in the midst of loss, we can learn, we can become leaders, we can lead not just our families, we can lead ourselves, we can lead organizations. We can lead. I just feel like we're in such a time right now where women are in a beautiful, beautiful space of leadership. So I want to leave our listeners with 3 real quick questions they can ask themselves. Take a look at your heart. What are your heart's desires? What brings you gladness and what brings you gratitude? What brings you light and where do you get to feel alive? Where do you lose track of time? Where do you get in the flow or in the zone? And those, my friends, are great keys, great clues to who you are to become when you grow up.
I love it. Laura, thank you so much for a great conversation. As always, to be continued. And that is episode 14 of the Soul Enchilada.